Something working? Something seems to be working. Excellent connection. Stream is live. Aha, here we go.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society.
You're in violation of secure communication procedures, Commodore.
So we just went ahead and fixed the glitch.
There is no America. There is no democracy.
Our fifth objective, a new world order.
There are no nations. There are no peoples. There are no Russians. There are no Arabs. There are no third worlds. There is no West.
Right-wing conspiracy.
What do you call it when the assassins accuse the assassin?
A new world order.
Thank you for plugging in to the Stones Unturned podcast.
Well, just a second there, Professor. We fixed the glitch.
I'm your host, Professor Thomas Henry Horan.
He reads everything.
Hello there, you lucky devils. You better bet your bippies he reads everything. So, I know I'm late, sort of. There's no set time. I can do this whenever I feel like it. But we'll see if anybody shows up. Is this set to public? Yes, okay. Squeeze this in. I may or may not actually launch into the actual episode tonight. Bitrate. Okay, don't care about Facebook. Let's do unified chat. Hi, Melissa. Somebody's here. Ooh, people are showing up. If you get this, I'm going to be working on the episode for a few more minutes. Then I will try to go ahead and record the episode and stream it live. I think everything is fixed. I think on the premium site, I think everything, the chat is fixed again. Is it not? What I want to get into is a routine where I, okay, the video player seems to be working. The chat seems to be working. The old chat messages are gone on the premium site. However, the, it is working again. WordPress.com pushed out a security update and it broke the chat. I let them know they fixed it, so now it seems to be working. And I apologize for not being on earlier today, but I don't apologize that much. 5 viewers, much better. Last week, was it Monday? Like nobody showed up. I got worried. And nobody's been commenting. And then I thought for a long time nobody was even chatting like about last week's episode. Like, did you guys even see last week's episode? Because I tried one idea to live premiere a recorded episode, and I ran to Walmart. When I came back, the internet had disconnected. And I wasn't here to reconnect it. So I didn't know if you people had just like got fed up. If you're here, say hello, please, on YouTube or whatever. You don't have to. I don't care. I don't care if anybody's watching anymore. I bought a book, 3 books. One more, it's a 3-book series. He's going to come out with another one. Michael Melsky, I'll double check. It's called The Dark Corners of the Lindbergh Kidnapping Case. That's the book you probably want to get. If there's 3 volumes. I got it on Kindle, bundle price $25. The best money I think I've ever spent. Hi, Angel. Hi, Max. Hi, Gospel. You're from Australia? That's outstanding. Thank you for plugging in. If you like it, click the description of this YouTube video. If you're not subscribed already, subscribe to the premium site. Think about doing that because what I'm doing right now, hi Goose, is I'm pre-gaming a premium stream. What I hope to do next week, too much stuff broke this week, now it's fixed. Record the episodes, get them uploaded to a server so it doesn't matter whether I get disconnected from the internet or not. You guys will be able to see the episode. Then when I do that, you'll be able to immediately search inside the video if you want. You don't have to wait for those features. So the episode would be recorded and edited and fairly smooth and fairly coherent. But then I will live premiere it, and I'll be on YouTube while we all watch the premium channel. You won't be able to see the episode on YouTube. When that starts working in the next couple of weeks, I will start doing free episodes on YouTube, like about Zodiac. Okay, because I think the whole world has finally seen Myth of the Zodiac Killer. You've had a chance to see it. If you haven't seen the documentary, okay, if you haven't read this book, the documentary, like, assumes you've read the book. Well, it didn't assume, but it's not. The documentary is not a TV version of this book. If you haven't read this book, you don't know anything about the so-called Zodiac Killer case. All you know is the myth. Robert Graysmith published this book. He had access to the case files. He lied. So you need to read this book. It's 3 books in one, all in one book. You can get Kindle or paperback, or on my website, you can order autographed copies. The first 1/3 of the book debunks Graysmith's myth. Every movie, every documentary that you've seen is based on the myth that Graysmith published in 1986. He had access to the police files, autopsy reports, crime scene, but he lied about it all. So you need to start over. So the first 1/3 of the book, I debunk Graysmith's book. The middle 1/3 is a much more academic piece on the history of vigilante journalism, blah, 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 where the Zodiac letters fit in. And then the last 1/3 of the book is I go through case by case what really happened, what the witnesses really said they saw, or survivors, whatever, what the fingerprints really, the actual evidence. There's a lot more evidence in each case than Graysmith let on. Okay? And then comparing the letters to the newspapers to the facts, and then showing you the letters were a hoax. I'm sorry, but the person who wrote those letters did not commit any murders. There's more than one killer. There's more than one person writing letters, but the original person writing letters, okay, identified that person. And then the documentary series, NBC Universal, they're showing it on Peacock and Oxygen, and I don't know, Australia, I don't know where. But that's like chapter 2. Okay, they studied the book, and then they went out and they interviewed people who'd never been interviewed before. They found even more stuff. They had the letters analyzed by forensics linguistics experts in France. I mean, it's an amazing documentary. I'm super proud of it. Drew Hurst Beeson is on it. He's great. You got to see that documentary if it's available in your country, but you still need to read the book. Then, in a couple of weeks now that everything seems to be working, okay, you mean the chat on the premium channel, Max? Because that's working now. It seems to be working again. They had to put out an update, and that wiped out, because it's the free version, and it's hosted on their server. I have a chat plugin that's hosted on my server, but I can't see who's online. Nobody can see who's online. It's bare bones, very bare bones. But with Wise Chat, it works great. It seems to be working right. 7 viewers, that's not too bad. The episode, I need to move some things around. The comment section on YouTube, well, Max, that's too bad, because if you want to comment, if you want to argue, you have to pay. Right, that's to get people to sign up. If they want to argue, if they want to post their ridiculous theories, they have to pay. Now, once my commitment, hi Creepy Crawl, once the documentary has aired in all the markets around the world where they can show it, which I think is probably by the end of this month, because it's been in Australia, it's been in Europe, it's been in the UK, then what I'll do is maybe I'll activate the comments on YouTube again, but they're, like they're held for review or something. So we'll see. It's about funneling people to pay because a lot of you people pay, and it's not fair for people to get. So, hi, Scott. So I'll take that under consideration, Max. But you also have to understand the YouTube. Now, I have 2 YouTube channels. There's one called the Stones Unturned Podcast, and this one that you're watching right now is Myth of the Zodiac Killer. So I will be doing free, ad-supported episodes following up the Peacock documentary. It's not just Peacock, it's NBC. They have a lot of platforms, a lot of channels, in case you haven't noticed. So when that's done, yeah, no, this is abuse. You want the argument clinic down the hall. So then okay. Since they were nice enough to pay me to be on their TV show, and they used the title, which was great. Talk about free publicity. But, so I think when I get, because with the premium website, some of you guys have been with me for 5 years, you put up with everything. So the main thing is live streaming. YouTube, I'm impressed. From the technical side, YouTube is fantastic, but the tubes are just too sensitive for a lot of the topics that we talk about on the premium channel. Okay. So, let me play you a video. This video is great. Give me 1 second. While I work on the tonight's episode. Okay.
Genetic control, 20% probability. 01,
okay.
Yes, here's the unlikely event that became true, and I just go on through the others the same way.
This is not.
Thanks. What I love about this, you're going to watch this while I finish polishing up the slideshow for tonight's episode. What I love is the ones who are sane and rational and personable, like Isaac Asimov, they get it completely wrong. The ones who look and sound completely insane, like our Buckminster Fuller, nails it. Marshall McLuhan and Buckminster Fuller nail the future. Okay, the ones but they look and sound crazy. Buckminster Fuller was probably at the very least Asperger's, but he nails it. So, okay, so you watch this while I finish putting the episode together.
Not a crap game. It's a serious game at the University of Pittsburgh about the year 2001. Rolling the dice is Dr. Olaf Helmer of the Rand Corporation. With Theodore Gordon, he is conducting a simulation exercise. A panel of experts has studied a list of possible 21st century developments, from personality-controlled drugs to household robots. They have estimated the numerical probability of each, from 0 to 100%. The 20-sided dice are then rolled to simulate these probabilities, a use of random numbers known as the Monte Carlo technique, and often used in think tank games. All of this is highly speculative, but the game serves a useful function. It encourages talented people to think about the future, the current fascination of a new intellectual breed, the futurists.
So we wind up with a world which has the following features. We have fertility control, 100-year lifespan, controlled thermonuclear power, continued automation, genetic control, man-machine symbiosis, household robots, wideband communications, opinion control, and continued urbanization.
A 71-year-old futurist who has been called the citizen of the 21st century, architect-engineer R. Buckminster Fuller.
We ourselves consist physically of atoms, and we know that all the atoms have their frequencies. It is theoretically possible to pick up all of our frequencies and actually send us by radio.
You mean we'll be able to transmit ourselves somewhere else?
Yes.
To be reconstituted in some distant place?
Yeah.
Today, at our universities and research centers, in government and in business, the futurists are looking at the 21st century. They do not pretend to be prophets. They say the future cannot be predicted. It will be invented, and it is determinable. People can determine the future if they understand and then decide on the choices open to them. The most important choices are likely to be sociological, political, and economic, not technological. In this broadcast, we will look at the future with the futurists, with these men. Sir Peter Bryan Medawar is a Nobel Prize-winning zoologist. Dennis Gabor is a physicist at the Imperial College of Science and Technology, London, and author of Inventing the Future. Daniel Bell is chairman of the Sociology Department, Columbia University, and head of the Commission for the Year 2000. Walter Sullivan is science editor of the New York Times. Gerard Peel is editor and publisher of the magazine Scientific American. Lord Ritchie Calder is a science writer and professor of international relations, Edinburgh University. Herman Kahn is director of the Hudson Institute and author of On Thermonuclear War. Isaac Asimov is a science and science fiction writer and professor of biochemistry, Boston University. Harrison Brown is professor of geochemistry, California Institute of Technology, and author of The Challenge of Man's Future. Bertrand de Juvenal is a French economist and journalist and director of the future-oriented group, The Futurables.
If I were offered to spend a day in the year 2000 and see how things are then, I said see how things are to be, I would hate it. Because I don't want to know how things are to be. I want to exert action as long as I live so that the sort of things which should, in my opinion, be, have more chances of being. If they're all set, it doesn't interest me anymore to see the year 2000 than it interests me to see the year 1000. The merit of the future is that it is not set. The merit of the future is that it is the area in which we can exert our will, exert our efforts, and try to validate our values. That is the merit of the future.
Some people talk about predicting the future as if the future was going to unfold itself independently of our own wishes and desires. Now, I think one can take it as one of the great lessons of modern science or modern technology that anything that is in principle possible will be done if people want to do it enough. So when one asks what is going to happen in the 21st century, what one really wants to ask is, what do we want to happen in the 21st century?
I'm myself a physical inventor, a passionate inventor, and I'm very well aware that I'm one of the probably last generation of physical inventors. Of course, we still need inventions, but we don't need very much in terms of physics. Biological inventions we still need. Cancer is still something we must get rid of. But after that, what is important, the creative minority must put their mind on human happiness, on the study of psychology and of sociology. If it were up to me, I wouldn't let a single first-class talent go any more into physics or chemistry.
Where would you put them?
Into psychology.
If I can be perhaps overly large about it, I would say we're becoming an intellectual society. Not that everybody's going to be an intellectual, This is a business civilization today. Most people are not businessmen, but the basic values of the society have been in terms of business. The basic rewards go to business. And I think in the same way, the basic institutions of the new society will be intellectual institutions, in that the scientists, engineers, mathematicians, economists will be the new men of the society. And I think it's true for one very important reason. It's not that we have more knowledge, which we do. There's a change in the character of the knowledge. This, I think, is the most important thing. And it's a change in the character of the knowledge in this respect that, by and large, the most important knowledge today is theoretical knowledge. This is where it seems to me the intellectual institutions, and particularly the university, becomes important.
Mr. Bell, most of us are inclined to think pretty much in the 21st century in terms of the gadgets we're going to have, the push-button life we're going to lead. Is that the way we ought to be looking at the next century?
Well, it's a very entrancing way of doing it, surely. But I'm not sure it really helps very much. I think so much of the discussions I've read about the future get concentrated on the new kinds of things that men will be able to do. It sort of feeds the kind of Batman or Superman kind of instincts some of us have, you know, in terms of being omnipotent in this particular way. Now, 35 years ago, one of the things which entranced people completely was the idea of fractional horsepower. And if you read the technological journals, the idea was everybody's life is going to be transformed with fractional horsepower, small motors. Now, it's true to some extent they help, because with fractional horsepower, you begin to get electric carving knives, you begin to get electric toothbrushes, but I won't say that these have necessarily transformed our lives in a very meaningful way. So I'm not sure that gadgetry is the best way of looking at the future. I would say, perhaps this reflects my own bent as a sociologist, to try to look at structural changes in society, which is why I come back to things like changes in pattern of occupation, changes in the sector distribution of an economy, changes in the character of knowledge, as overall determinative of the kinds of jobs and lives people will have.
What do you think will be the major scientific breakthroughs in the next 34 years before the turn of the century?
Well, of course, there may be some fundamental breakthroughs in knowledge, knowledge of the nature of the universe, you know, resolving these problems as to the nature of the universe, whether it's an eternal, ever-expanding universe or an oscillating, expanding and contracting kind of a universe, things of tremendous philosophical interest, but perhaps of more remote practical importance. Another one of these would relate to the nature of matter. Here we've been groping towards an understanding of the nature of matter, and it looked very simple a generation ago. Now it's gotten terribly complicated with all of the many different little bits of matter that you can produce in an atom smasher. But obviously, behind all of this, there's some system, there's some pattern, and perhaps we'll get this. Again, the practical applications of this are hard to foresee. But there are also very practical things that I hope and think that we are going to do. We're going to make it practical to produce energy in a clean way and in great quantity, perhaps through harnessing the hydrogen bomb reaction, the fusion reaction. These recent developments in producing batteries and fuel cells that can be used to store and make use of energy conjures up such a wonderful world, you know, of no automobile exhaust, no stack gases, you know. This really could be a brave new world of clean cities and clean highways. And this, it seems to me, is within reach.
By far the most important task of modern medicine is to extend throughout the whole world the kind of medical advantages and privileges which are enjoyed today in the United States and in the advanced Western countries generally. And this will have to happen. This isn't merely a medical problem. This is a tremendous problem of administration, a problem of politics as well. And needless to say, it would be pointless to achieve it unless it were accompanied by a population policy. Because one of the consequences of these advances in medicine, indeed it's not it's already happening, is the threat, which is now a reality, of overpopulation.
I have a phrase which I use in my lectures to my students, which is, freedom begins with breakfast. And you can have all the freedom in the world, but if you're not fed and you're not taken care of, if society is not taking care of your needs, then you're not free. The liberated slave dies in the ditch, you know, of hunger. And therefore we've got to come to terms with what, in fact, are the basic requirements of vast population we're going to have. And on that world scale of population, not just pockets of hunger, but really beginning to look at this problem as a potential catastrophe of mankind. The population explosion is just, to me, as serious as the atomic explosion.
The number one human problem I would name is the problem with which 2/3 of mankind goes to bed every night, and that's the problem, when do we eat? The feeding of mankind, the feeding of the poor, the clothing of them, the housing of them, means the industrial revolution of the underdeveloped countries of the world. So how is that revolution going to be managed humanely? The industrial revolutions that have occurred so far in history have been pretty cruel operations. We deplore the Russian story, we look with horror on the Chinese story, but we ought to examine our own histories and our own memories of what it took to conduct the American Industrial Revolution. The 35 million human beings that arrived in Steerage Passage and percolated through the slums of our cities. The Chinese that are buried under the ties of the railroads, as Archibald MacLeish has said. The reconstruction of the human cost of our Industrial Revolution would appall us if we did it honestly. The answer to this problem is economic aid, and economic aid highly informed by science and technology. The important thing here is information transfer. It's transfer of technology. Technology of the education of the cadres of engineers and scientists that are needed, and doctors and physicians and technicians of all kinds. The delivery of $1 worth of this aid stimulates the production of a total of at least $5 of local activity in economic development, potentially in Brazil or India, because the major input at the other end is labor and mineral or agricultural resources, which they have in abundance. And this is the best bet the American people could lay on the future with the enormous resources and capacity that the scientific industrial revolution has placed at the disposal of our democracy.
Well, we keep on saying that the great conflict which is coming, I don't necessarily mean a war conflict, but the conflict of attitude, is no longer East-West, it's North-South. It is, in fact, the colored world against what I call North Temperate Zone man. It's a rather useful description, by the way. It includes the whole of North America, includes the whole of Europe, includes the whole of Russia and Japan. It's really the clash between the highly developed countries and the underdeveloped countries.
We talk about undeveloped countries and how people are going to get the most advanced technology. This is how it's going to happen. It's going to happen via the moon. For the first time in the history of man, they're sending man off into space to finally stay there on more than a sandwich and thermospatal basis, which it's been using so far, to really stay out on the moon for a year, space for a year. You're going to have to send with him everything that he's needed for his ecological regeneration. The air must be there, he is a process, and then he'll have to operate as a process. In doing so, we're going to then have to contract something like a mile diameter activity of the Earth down to a little black box weighing about 500 pounds, the most we can allow, which is going to take care of all his regeneration so that his liquids and everything become satisfactorily regenerative locally. You'll have to add a little to it every once in a while because entropy is at work and systems always really do run down. But he'll be able to operate for a long, long time. And the capsule that he's in will be the first scientific house in the history of man. So with 2 billion people looking at him all the time, the little black box operating there, everybody in the world is going to realize you can have one of those little black boxes. You don't need any sewer systems, and you don't need any water supplies. You don't need any separate generators in the city. This little black box will just keep you going.
We will continue with Buckminster Fuller on the 21st century in a moment.
Are we in the future likely to have a great increase in the scientific knowledge to a magnitude we can't even dream of today, thanks to him from brawn work to do simply brain work?
I see humans around the world having one very, very important function. You cannot have mass production unless you have mass consumption. The more consumers, the bigger your undertaking. As we really come to automation, which can really do the physical work, people don't have any significance whatsoever anymore as muscle or automatons.
muscle machines. They have only significance as consumers. Whoever has the most customers is going to win in the great industrial battles. This is very important. China, we lost the enormous numbers of customers when we lost China as friend. Whoever is going to get India and Africa and South America to be the patrons of their industrialization needs them as consumers, not as producers. They don't have to pay for anything. They pay by just being there as regenerative consumers. Because now I'll have to talk about something which will be one of the very big new realizations by 2000 AD, which will be a realistic scientific accounting system of what is wealth. We now know that wealth isn't the goal that the old pirates used to have. Wealth is energy, and we have an Einsteinian world in which the scientists found that when energy left any local system, engine, it only did so by joining another system. It did not go out of the universe. But experiment after experiment, they found the energy never got lost. So they had to write an entirely new law of energy called the law of conservation of energy, which said energy can neither be created nor lost. So then suddenly we got a new clue to wealth. Wealth is not something that's going to deteriorate and get lost, which was a great way of thinking and all the economics. Next thing I discovered that wealth consists of something more than energy. It consists. So I found that now that every time we use it, we say, I make an experiment. Now, every time you make an experiment, you always learn more. You can't learn less. You may learn that what you thought was happening isn't happening. That saves you a lot of your time, because we want to then increase the effectiveness of our time. So I then say that the intellectual factor in wealth is one which every time we use it always improves. We always learn more. I've discovered that the energy part can't run down, and the intellectual factor, every time we use it, improves. Therefore, wealth, I discovered, is something that always increases. So that I would then point out to you that we are going to be able to afford to make everybody customers, and we're going to be able to afford then to bring in your Africa, and this is the answer to your question. We talk all world, going to have to make all of humanity successful or none.
What do you think the relative power will be between the present major contenders, China, Soviet Union, the United States, and some of the older powers, England, France?
Well, we would, if we had to guess a kind of a lineup, it'd be something like the following. Two more or less superpowers, United States and Soviet Union, but nowhere near as super as they have been in the past by quite a bit. 5, say, large powers, led by Japan, which is the great undiscussed quantity in the world today. It's a fantastically vital, dynamic country. Probably followed by either West Germany or France, then in turn followed by China, and then there's the United Kingdom probably bringing up the rear. There'd be 3 intermediate powers at least: Italy, India, Canada. These are all on the verge of becoming large powers, but not really. And then lots of other powers, of course.
You put Red China fairly far down that list.
Yes.
34 years won't have seen them rise to the Soviet-American rank.
Oh, almost without question not. On the record, China has been the greatest power in the world for about 2,000-3,000 years. Most Americans don't realize this, but during most of the last 2,000-3,000 years, the Chinese were richer than the Europeans per capita, in total, more advanced, and so on. When China has been well governed, it's been centrally governed. You know, and they're used to these interregnums of 200-300 years, 100 years, and then return to power. The problem they have is there's a country lying off their coast, Japan, which is even more oppressive. If you took Japan away, I think China would end up as the 3rd largest power. They're competing with Japan, and that, as we learned 20 years ago, is quite difficult. Japan is a country which is currently doubling its gross national product every 7 or 8 years. Nothing has grown that rapidly in the history of the world. Furthermore, if you study the Japanese national character, Japanese mores, Japanese government, Japanese technologies, Japanese decision-making, you more or less conclude there's a good chance this process will continue to the end of the century.
We are now in a world in which no place on Earth is more than a few hours from any other place, where no one on Earth really need be ignorant of what is happening anywhere else on Earth, so that we have the physical capacity to be a truly single world. What is needed now is what is needed now is getting rid of our habits of thought that date back to the time when every little valley on Earth was far removed from every neighboring valley, when every little city was a separate little world. And this is difficult to do. It may represent, in fact, the greatest problem facing humanity a century from now, when we have all the capacity to conduct our affairs as a reasonable unit. This is not to mean that we're all going to be the same, we're all going to conform. Nobody can have regional differences, not at all. We face a number of common dangers. We can defeat those dangers only by common action, and we must learn how to take that common action. We have the physical capacity to do so. We need the heart to do so. How one can tame the human heart is beyond me, except that I think that we have two alternatives. By a century from now, the human heart will be tamed to the extent of facing the problems of the world sufficiently together so as not to kick each other while doing so, or else we will have destroyed ourselves sufficiently so that this entire discussion here means nothing.
I am just as convinced as can be that that man today has much more power than he realizes. I am convinced that man has it within his power today to create a world in which people the world over can lead free and abundant and even creative lives. And that starting now, applying the power we have is none too soon. We have already waited to the point where we are in very serious danger of painting ourselves into a corner. One of our problems is that we tend to live for today. We tend to say that, well, in one way or another, things will work themselves out. We can no longer afford to behave that way. We must take a long-range view of man and his problems, and we must attempt to the best of our ability to look into the future, to ask where we are heading, and if we don't like where we're heading, then to start now to do something about it. It's purely a question of putting that power to work, putting it to work energetically enough. And here is where my fears really lie. I fear that we won't recognize soon enough that we do have this power, and once recognizing it, that we will put it to work rapidly enough. But I am convinced that this can happen. I am convinced that we can create a world which will pale the golden age of Pericles into nothingness.
What I love is the two who got it right. Marshall McLuhan saying the internet, the global village, will just be everybody is in everybody else's business and pissing about it all the time. He completely nailed it. And Buckminster Fuller saying you're going to have 8 billion consumers. Nobody will have a job. Everybody will live off the grid and they will just consume. He sees Africa, Asia, and it's just consumers. And he's absolutely right. That's what I love. Oh my goodness. Let's see. We got 18 people. That's not bad. Is anybody? I guess hold on a second. Sorry, second on a cough drop there. Here we go. So I think this is ready. Let me take a shot at it. Let me start recording. So goodbye Facebook, goodbye YouTube for tonight. You need to be on the premium channel to see this episode. It's about the Lindbergh kidnapping. The totally phony. Okay, so there's a couple books out there. There's and a couple websites. The Lindbergh kidnapping hoax. There's Lisa Pearlman's book. Judge Lisa Pearlman's book is pretty good. But this guy is called The Dark Corners, and he has no real theory. He kind of does what I did. go through those massive piles. He somehow made it through massive piles of FBI reports and things like this. Things that either we've never seen or got swept under the rug, or he doesn't have a hill. He doesn't die on any hills. But for tonight's episode, one more time, we have to kind of go through the crime and the investigation of the crime. The next episode, when we start looking about what happened to the ransom money, we start to pull out a little bit, take a broader view. You see how this really does plug in to this blob that I've been talking about, we've been talking about on this podcast for the last 5 years. I think that's about all the introduction I need to give it. Let me just get started. So I'm going to say goodnight to YouTube and Facebook. Get on the premium channel. Catch up on these episodes, because this is the case. Let me explain one more time. We see the links between Zodiac, Manson, Son of Sam, Dahmer, and a lot of these things. When did it start? So we can see how a lot of these people start doing these things and figuring out these ideas and putting them into practice during the Second World War. Were there cases before then? So I was looking for cases where you have this 3-ring media circus. You have either one case with 10 million suspects, or you have 5, 10 murders that begin to figure out they're connected. Each one has a suspect, blah, blah, blah. But there's the media, and then when you dig into it, you find out the victims are much more interesting than we thought. The suspects are much more interesting than we thought. The law enforcement people involved are much more interesting than we thought. It turns out it involves things like the CIA, the KGB. Now we're beginning to see with Lindbergh, the Gestapo, the SD, German intelligence. How far back does this go? And it looks like it starts with the phony Lindbergh kidnapping. You have a plan, and you follow this plan. And it goes back all the way back to 1913, the murder of Mary Fagan, where you have these crooked private detectives trying to frame this janitor, African-American janitor Conley, because everybody and their dog can plainly see that it's the plant manager, Leo Frank. To this day, there are people who try to frame Conley, okay? Leo Frank was innocent. No, he wasn't. But they blew it. Frank was convicted, sentenced, and then he was lynched because the governor commuted his death sentence. There's just no doubt about it. He's guilty. So these people, the William Burns Detective Agency and some journalists, they kind of sit down and figure out what they did wrong. Then you get this, the first conspiracy theories about the death of Warren Harding. President Warren Harding died in office. But then in the Lindbergh case, they nail it. You don't let a competent law enforcement agency investigate the crime. You immediately take it out of their hands. You immediately launch your media campaign. You cannot let the media honestly report the facts of this case. You've got to get your propaganda out there. So you can't wait for the ball to get kicked. You have to have your plan in place before you bump off your victims or whatever it is that you're doing. And then this is the plan. So we're seeing this in the Lindbergh case, which I knew nothing about until very recently. And I'm catching up on as fast as I can. But I don't want to get too caught, because once again, it's pretty obvious Lindbergh was in on it from the beginning. But how did the baby die? Is that even his kid? See, you can spend the rest of your life lost in this little maze that was created to confuse you. Are you with me? You can spend the rest of your life trying to crack this case. Just like who actually killed Sharon Tate? We'll never know. I don't think we'll ever know who really did it. You've got 20 people confess. Who actually killed John Bonet? You've got 6 people confess. You'll never know. And you get lost in this little jungle of trying to solve the case, and you don't see the bigger picture. maybe not every serial killer fits into this, but then we find out who Dahmer really was, and we begin to see this pattern. So one more time, I'm going to go through the events kind of in chronological order in the investigation, what got covered up. There are some really, really good books. One's called Suspect Number 1 by Judge Lisa Pearlman. She really does pin it right on Lindbergh because he's a white supremacist and this is a deformed child or whatever. But the mistake she makes is trying to crack the case. That's the problem. Forget cracking the case. Look at the players. Look at the media program. Look at all of these things, and you'll see what's really going on. The most important thing that's going on. It might not even have been the Lindbergh kid that they found out there in the woods. It might have been somebody else's kid. We'll never know. I don't think he had the kid cremated, so there'll be no DNA testing. Like, there's so much we'll never know, and you can't get bogged down too much in those details. But we're going to one more time. Then we're going to see names are going to pop up, and then in the next episode, which will be pre-recorded, and what I'll do next time, hopefully, is I'll keep the YouTube stream going while YouTube viewers won't see the episode, but we'll be chatting about it, talking about it. We'll see how that goes. Because, once again, if something happens to the internet that Marshall McLuhan thought so much of, Creepy Crawl, Asimov's 19th Foundation, translated as Al-Qaeda? Yeah, maybe. But most of those guys were wrong. They're very altruistic. They're very utopian. They're very optimistic. And they get it wrong. To a great extent, they get it wrong. The ones who get it right are the ones who sound crazy. A lot of people in communication still don't know what to think of Marshall McLuhan, but he absolutely nailed it. Take it from the professor. Marshall McLuhan absolutely nailed it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say goodnight to YouTube and Facebook, and we'll see everybody over at the Cool Kids site. To click the link in the description of this video and get signed up. When you watch past episodes, and I've uploaded a lot of classic documentaries like The Clinton Chronicles, Boys for Sale, you can search inside the video, that helps me when I forget what I talked about in the last episode. So, hi, Kevin. Hi, Scott. Did I say hi to everybody? Okay, and then there will be on this YouTube channel, Myth of the Zodiac Killer, there will be some, I'm not crying, I just had eye drops. There will be some free episodes to follow up to the documentary, talking about who wrote the letters, who actually started writing the letters, as they show in the documentary a little bit. They stayed completely away from the handwriting. I don't blame them, but more than one person is writing letters, more than one person's committing crimes, who the suspects really were. Okay, so that's basically the plan. So let me play the closing. No, I'm not even going to play the closing theme. So good night, YouTube. Good night, Facebook. Thank you very much. We'll see you soon. Why isn't the chat? There it is. Well, it sort of did. Okay. Okay, so we'll see you, and I'll see you guys, and then I'll start. I'm going to try to go through the episode. Hopefully it's ready to go, or I can at least record it and edit it. Then it'll be uploaded tomorrow. But from now on, I'm hoping to record the premium episodes because they need to start being a little bit more focused because they're getting very important. We're finally getting to the foundation of the whole rabbit hole. It's one big rabbit hole. That's the point, and we're slowly proving that. So good night, you guys, and everybody else. Head over to the premium site, click the link in the description of this YouTube video, and get signed up.